That sun-drenched kitchen in our suburban Denver home used to feel like the place where the world was neatly arranged. My mother, who always tied her hair into a low bun and hummed old melodies while doing the dishes, would turn to me, place her hand on my shoulder and say, "You're going to have a life no one can break, Stella." I believed her, the way people believe spring will come after a bitter March. Every day after work, I'd call her, just to hear her say, "I made old-fashioned pot roast today. What about you? Did you laugh enough?" That bond wasn't showy, but it was strong enough to lift me every time life slipped out of my grip. That year, I was 36, working a solid job in public relations downtown, living in a 12th-floor apartment with glass windows facing the Rockies, cycling through short-lived relationships that left nothing behind but deleted texts. I moved through life as steadily as breath, until the night that gala pulled me into a different orbit. It was a fundraiser for the city's children's hospital. I went at the invitation of Ivy, my closest friend from college, now a sponsor of the event. The burgundy gown I wore fit a little tight at the waist but made my shoulders look slimmer. I wasn't expecting much walking into the Four Seasons ballroom, maybe some free drinks and soft jazz in the background. And then I saw him. He stood near the bar. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark brown hair slightly tousled like he'd just come in from a run, but his suit was tailored to perfection. A champagne flute in hand, eyes scanning the room like he could read every person there. When his gaze landed on me, I turned away, then looked back. "You're not a fan of champagne?" he asked as he approached. His smile tilted like something had just become interesting. "I like it, but I prefer bourbon." He laughed. "You're definitely not easy to sway." I held my ground, at least until the second drink. His name was Ethan Blake, 38, founder and CEO of a cybersecurity software company recently valued at over $600 million. I didn't learn that from him, only from Ivy, whispering behind me like she was spilling state secrets. I'd met successful men before, but Ethan was different. He didn't boast, didn't ask me what I did until dinner was over. And when I told him I worked in communications, he simply nodded and asked, "So, what kept you up all night during your last campaign?" That night didn't end with us exchanging numbers. It ended with a plan. Tomorrow night, at Veranda, if you're not busy saving the world. I went. And kept going. Within 3 weeks, we were sailing on Lake Dillon, having dinners at an Italian place where the chef talked to every table, and one evening, Ethan surprised me with tickets to an outdoor symphony up in the Aspen Hills. "You once said you liked Beethoven more than Brahms." I remember. I still remember the night he brought me to his penthouse for the first time. Lights from the city reflected off the windows. Ethan stood behind me, holding a small velvet box. "I know it's too soon, but when I saw you laugh telling that story about your mom cutting your dad's hair for 30 years, I thought, I can't lose this woman." Inside was an oval-cut diamond, flawless, sparkling like firelight caught in a glass of wine. "No need to answer right away," he said. "But if you're ready, I don't want you walking through this world alone anymore." I said yes, without hesitation. My mother cried when I showed her the ring. "This is the man who's going to hold your hand all the way," she whispered, voice trembling with joy. Ethan and my mom grew close in the strangest, most beautiful way. He often joined our family dinners on Thursdays. I jokingly called them soft cross-examinations. He'd bring her favorite tart from that bakery she loved and stay to help my dad wash dishes. One night, I asked why he didn't just make an excuse. He smiled. "Because this is how I show your family I don't just want to marry you. I want to belong to everything that made you." Mom began calling him the boy next door. The universe delivered 10 years late. She dove into wedding prep with unmatched enthusiasm, picking flowers, compiling guest lists, buying so many bridal magazines I teased her about planning something bigger than a royal wedding. I didn't blame her. Honestly, I believed everything was falling into place too, until things began shifting. Silently, subtly, and without warning. I can't pinpoint exactly when things between Kendall and me began to crack. Maybe it was when I was chosen to represent our high school debate team while she was assigned to assist backstage. Or maybe it was the year I got a full scholarship to NYU, and Kendall chose to stay close to home, saying she wanted to be near family. Either way, we wore the mask of closeness well enough to pose for Thanksgiving photos no one would look too closely at. Kendall was 2 years younger, with soft blonde waves and a knack for dressing like she walked out of a magazine. Her charm came naturally. She had a string of wealthy boyfriends, none lasting past 2 holiday seasons. Still, my mom always said gently, "She just hasn't met the right person yet. I'm sure she'll settle down when she finds someone who truly loves her." I never argued, but I remembered the time she hid the concert ticket I'd won and went in my place, wearing the dress I'd saved a whole month's paycheck to buy. When I asked, she shrugged. "What's the big deal? You hate crowds anyway." When I announced my engagement to Ethan, my mom sank into a kitchen chair, crying tears of joy. My dad nodded, satisfied. Kendall was silent for 3 seconds, then said, "I always thought you'd be the last one of us to get married." I laughed it off. Despite old memories occasionally surfacing, I chose Kendall as my maid of honor, partly because Mom said family is forever, but mostly because I truly believed Ethan wasn't the kind of man swayed by flirty glances or sweet-toned voices. They had met a few times at family dinners, and I remembered Ethan once saying, "Your sister's pretty funny." There was no red flag in that. I was too busy booking the wedding venue and writing thank you cards. Kendall accepted right away and sent over a Google Doc packed with bridesmaid dress ideas, color themes, even a list of summer allergy souffle flowers. I was a bit surprised by the enthusiasm, but told myself maybe she genuinely wanted to reconnect. At her parents' house, when Kendall saw Ethan again after months, I noticed her tug at his sleeve, adjusting his cuff. Ethan smiled slightly, didn't pull away. I sat on the couch, smiling like nothing happened, though a chill crept across the back of my neck. At the engagement photo shoot, Kendall arrived more than 45 minutes late, wearing a dress shorter than necessary and bold wine-colored lipstick. When the photographer asked for a natural, close family shot, she stood closer to Ethan than to me, her arm resting on his shoulder like they'd always been that familiar. I stepped back to avoid crowding the frame. Not out of shyness, but because I feared I might say something I couldn't take back. My mom, who usually sensed every shift in our home, quietly placed a hand on my back while reviewing the photos. "Kendall sometimes doesn't realize when she's crossing the line," she whispered. "But I believe you have the strength to see things clearly." I smiled faintly. But that night, back at my apartment, I found myself sitting in front of the mirror longer than usual, wondering if something in me had changed. Ethan still held me while we slept, but when he turned over, his phone lit up on the nightstand. "Sender?" "Kendall. Message. That photo you sent today is lovely, but I clearly remember standing on the right. Why do I look like I'm in the middle of you two?" I read the message again and again, my heart beating faster for no reason I could name. The next morning, while Kendall was showering during a weekend visit, I checked her phone. I didn't regret it. I saw a selfie of the two of them, taken in a bridal shop's fitting room. The one Ethan said he couldn't join me at because of a last-minute meeting. Kendall's caption, "You picked the wrong shade, sis. Ivory suits him better." I didn't confront them. Didn't rage. Didn't weep. I just withdrew from trust the way someone slowly eases their foot out of icy water, bit by bit, until there's no sensation left. I started saving everything. Messages, calendars, doorbell camera footage. Not out of obsession, but because I'd spent too long living in the light without preparing for what shadows might hold. A week later, Kendall offered to visit the wedding venue with Ethan if I was busy. I know his taste. You don't have to worry, she said. I looked at her, then at Ethan. He hesitated. It's convenient. I'm not great at planning stuff. I nodded. That night, I called to postpone the wedding by a month, citing extra prep time. Ethan didn't argue. Kendall didn't ask. I started noticing a strange scent on Ethan's shirts when I did laundry. Not my perfume, not the usual office musk or morning coffee. It was feminine, sweet, but haunting. I'd smelled it before. In Kendall's room, right before she came into the living room with a cocktail and joked, "Are you sure he's not a secret model? That man turns heads everywhere." My story doesn't end here. It's just that when everything began to slide off track, I learned to stand still, look straight, and remember every detail. Because some people don't steal with force. They quietly step in and take what was never theirs to begin with, as if they had every right. I think Kendall had begun taking those steps, but what she didn't know was that I no longer closed my eyes when I loved. Ethan started sleeping in later, though he used to get up before me to make coffee. Our conversations became thin, like condensation on a window, fragile, easy to avoid. He still asked about my work, but didn't really listen. My answers would trail off into silence, while he stayed absorbed in his phone, with a blank expression. One Monday morning, I noticed he changed the password on his laptop. I didn't confront him. But that afternoon, when he said he had to meet with the product team in Boulder and would be home late, I saw his wallet still sitting on the kitchen counter. Inside were 2 tickets to the Denver Symphony Hall, a pair. That night, when I asked, he blinked for a moment before replying. "I booked them a while ago and forgot. I wanted to surprise you, but now it's too late." He smiled awkwardly. I smiled back, but said nothing. I started recording moments I used to breeze past. Kendall began appearing more than necessary. "Do you want me to meet with the cake vendor for you?" Or, "Ethan texted asking if you're switching the buffet menu." She made it sound helpful, like a devoted sister, but something felt off. Very off. Like the message that popped up on Ethan's screen while he was in the shower. "Don't forget to remind her to cancel the Friday fitting. I already scheduled mine." How did she know I had a dress fitting booked at Cherry Creek? I tried playing dumb, changing the subject, hoping she'd slip. But Kendall always stayed one step ahead. At a family dinner, when my mom complimented my weight loss, Kendall laughed. "I've started following Ethan's diet too. It really works." I looked at Ethan, waiting for him to correct her, or at least deny it. But he just served himself more soup and said nothing. The next day, while unpacking after a weekend camping trip to Estes Park, I found a small fabric pouch in the trunk of Ethan's car. Inside was a silver earring with an amethyst stone. I recognized it immediately. Kendall wore those at our engagement party at my parents' house. The same evening Ethan left early, blaming market stress. I didn't react harshly. I simply handed it to him when he got home. "Did you drop this?" He looked at it, paused for 2 heartbeats, then smiled. "Oh, probably Kendall's. I gave her a ride to the florist last week. Her car broke down." I didn't ask why he hadn't mentioned it. Didn't ask why Kendall never brought it up. I just nodded and placed the earring back in the desk drawer, right next to the stack of unsent wedding invitations. The following evening, while I was preparing a major presentation for the upcoming communications summit, Kendall texted. "Ethan asked me to drop off the printed seating chart he took from the older file. Are you home?" I typed back, "No need, I have the original file." When Ethan got home, I was still by my laptop, as usual, but instead of waiting for him to speak, I looked straight at him and asked, "I have a meeting with my team tomorrow morning. If I asked you to drop off some documents, who would you call?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, in your contacts, who's at the top of your ready-to-help list?" He didn't respond immediately. Then, as if he couldn't stand the tension, he said, "Kendall's just trying to help. You're overthinking it." I gave a soft smile. No bitter words, no accusations. I simply pulled the blanket over me and turned my back to him. In the silence of the night, I heard Ethan sigh, his phone buzz, and then soft footsteps walking out of the bedroom. That Saturday morning, I decided to wash Ethan's car, not because of suspicion, just as a normal gesture. In the sunglasses compartment, I found something small, yet illuminating, like a flashlight on a hidden map. A hotel receipt from Vale. Double room. 2 guests. 3 weeks ago. I took the paper, went into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. Every detail suddenly sharpened, like they were etched into the countertop. The nights Ethan came home late without reason, the phone chimes he read but never answered, the messages Kendall accidentally sent. I didn't confront him that day. I called Ivy, asked her to meet for coffee at our usual corner cafe. When I laid the receipt on the table, she didn't ask why. She just placed her hand over mine, gently. "Whatever you need, I've got you." I began packing, not my luggage, but my emotions, memories, and trust. I mentally placed each in separate boxes, labeled warning, disconnected, sugar-coated lies. I still didn't have irrefutable proof, but I didn't need more evidence. Just one night where Ethan would look into my eyes and no longer see the woman who once made him forget time. When that happened, I'd know. The breakup had begun long before I ever said a word. That morning, I woke up with a weight on my chest, as if the apartment's air had been sucked out overnight. Ethan was already gone, no note left behind, no kiss on the cheek like he used to. On the table was an unopened muffin box, still warm, but cold in an entirely different way. I called his office, keeping my voice light, as if I had a file from a partner firm that Ethan needed to sign, urgently. The secretary, Diana, said he was in a meeting but that I could bring the papers up. "He always prioritizes you, Stella," she said, a slight hesitation in her voice. I put on a charcoal gray blazer, applied a nude lipstick, and headed to the building where Ethan's tech company occupied the 14th floor. The doorman recognized me, waved with no suspicion. I wasn't carrying any documents, but my heart was full of unanswered questions. Diana looked startled when I stepped into the reception area. Her face tightened. "He's in the middle of," but I didn't wait for her to finish. My hand was already on the executive office door handle, pushing it open just enough for the sound to spill out. Inside the soundproof glass-walled office, Ethan was leaning against his desk. The light behind him cast a shadow of 2 people tangled together. His hands were wrapped around Kendall's waist, her head tilted toward his, their lips meeting in a kind of intimacy impossible to misinterpret. His white shirt was wrinkled at the shoulders. Her wrist still wore the bracelet my mother gave me when I graduated. I didn't say a word. I stood frozen, watching a slow-motion scene where the sound had been turned all the way down. When the door clicked shut, both turned. Ethan stiffened as if he'd been doused with ice water. Kendall didn't blink. She didn't move her hand from his shoulder. "Stella..." Ethan stepped toward me, his voice trembling as he tried to stay calm. This isn't... I mean, it's not what you think. "I think I've got it right," I said, my eyes fixed on Kendall, who showed no sign of regret in her gaze. "We didn't mean for it to go this far," Kendall said, her voice disturbingly composed. "It all started when Ethan drove me to pick out wedding flowers, and from there, I didn't ask how long. I didn't need to count the nights I stayed home, wrapping gifts for our guests while they carved out hours in this office. Every detail now fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, chillingly complete." Ethan reached out, as if touching me could undo something. I stepped back. "Don't." He froze, then lowered his head. I didn't know how to say it. "I thought I had more time." "More time to keep betraying me?" My voice cracked. A week, a month? Until we're standing at the altar, and you finally decide to let go? No one answered. I pulled out my phone, sent a short message to my mom. Wedding's off, we'll call later. Then I turned and walked out of the building, each step echoing coldly on the marble floor. That afternoon, I sat in the car for nearly an hour before starting the engine. I don't remember how I drove home, only that the July wind hissed through the open window like someone screaming in my ear, "Wake up, Stella." That night, I curled up on the bathroom floor, the dim golden light doing nothing to chase away the shadows inside me. I called Ivy. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Whatever you need, say it, I'm coming now." Then hung up. 30 minutes later, she knocked on my door with a paper bag of red wine, a box of pasta, and eyes more comforting than any words. 2 days later, my mom arrived. She hugged me so tightly my shoulders shook. But I didn't cry. I'd already used up all my tears trying to hold on to someone who'd left long ago. The next week was a string of cancellations, returned RSVPs, deleted photo folders, and phone calls to vendors I once laughed with. Everyone said, "We're so sorry." So was I. Sorry for myself. I met with the therapist Ivy recommended. The room was olive green, soothing. The couch was deep, the kind that makes you sink in before you realize. After the third session, I finally started talking about Kendall. About the harmless-seeming texts, about her hand on Ethan's shoulder, about trust bleeding out day by day, without a sound. "I feel stupid," I admitted. "No." The therapist shook her head, her eyes devoid of pity. "You simply believed in something anyone in love would believe." I left the session not exactly relieved, but at least seeing the truth from a new lens. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It was that they chose not to be decent. By that point, Ethan still hadn't called. Kendall sent just one text. "I'm sorry, but I do love him." I didn't reply. I kept the message. Not as a reminder, but so I wouldn't forget I survived something I once thought would destroy every soft part of me. I bought a new leather notebook and started writing a list of things I wanted to do before turning 40. On the first page, I wrote, "Don't forgive too quickly. Don't smile when it's not needed. Don't let anyone take your dignity without paying a price." A canceled wedding isn't an ending. It's a detour. One day, I'll tell this story without my throat tightening. But not today. Today, I just want an afternoon without tears, a cup of hot tea, a dreamless night. That's enough. Chicago greeted me with a soft, early fall drizzle and the echo of car horns bouncing off the buildings downtown. The temporary apartment I rented on the 7th floor of a red brick building near the Kinsey Bridge was modest, scratched wooden floors, basic furniture, but the windows faced the river. I dragged in my suitcase, changed the bed linens, hung my clothes, and turned on the coffee maker with no expectation except silence. I didn't post anything on social media. No photos of me leaving Denver, no check-ins at a new address. I simply emailed my former boss, formally resigning and requesting a file transfer to the North Branch. No lengthy explanation. Life here began with online meetings at 8 a.m., constant deadlines and quiet dinners of instant noodles accompanied by the whir of a ceiling fan. 3 weeks after settling in, I was assigned to attend a digital media investment conference held at the Sheraton Grand. Warm lights bounced off rows of gray suits, polished leather shoes, and glasses of white wine swirling in practiced hands. I didn't mingle, just quietly took notes from the third row, like a shadow behind the industry's sheen. During the panel on post-pandemic fundraising strategies, I was seated at a table with the keynote guest, Zachary Foster, founder of Foster Equity, a well-known angel investment firm on both coasts. He arrived late, jacket slightly damp from the rain, hair tousled from the wind, unaccompanied by assistants. He shook hands with each of us, calm eyes, no pretense. When he got to me, he said, "Stella Monroe, I heard you restructured the entire PR campaign for Orion Tech. That's impressive." I looked up, a little surprised. I didn't think anyone outside the board remembered that detail. I tend to remember what others overlook. More useful than remembering Bitcoin prices. He smiled, simple and genuine. The conversation flowed. No awkwardness, no overeagerness. He asked my thoughts on AI's role in crisis communications. I asked whether he chooses investments by instinct or data. No personal questions, no coffee invites, no token card exchange. The next day, an email from him appeared in my inbox. I think our conversation yesterday was left unfinished. If you have time, I'd like to buy you an espresso at Blue Bottle near the Clark Bridge. Short, honest, no ambiguity. I went. The wind from Lake Michigan whipped my hair as I turned into the cafe. Zachary was already there, reading an old Steinbeck book, no phone in hand. As I approached, he looked up and said, "Right on time. I like people who are on time." That meeting led to many others. We didn't call it dating, just two people having weekday lunches, sharing thoughts on HR, user behavior data, and favorite bookstores. He never asked about my past. Never interrupted when I finally talked about pulling my name from a misprinted wedding guest list. The first night I woke up from a nightmare about Ethan, Zachary didn't ask why. He simply turned on the kitchen light, poured warm water, and sat beside me on a stool near the sink. Silent until my heartbeat calmed. One afternoon, while reviewing designs for a partner's new brand identity, he asked softly, "Do you still believe in people?" I froze. He didn't push. I was betrayed by a best friend, lost half my company because I trusted too easily, lost a wife because I thought she'd stay. Trust is something I've relearned, piece by piece. If you're relearning too, I can wait. I didn't answer, just smiled. But that night, I slept better than I had in months. Zachary wasn't one for grand declarations. He showed he cared through small things, remembering I was allergic to honey, buying the exact Pilot G2 pens I liked, guiding me out of crowds when he noticed I clenched my hands. My panic signal. He didn't build castles of words. He laid bricks of trust with consistency. I stopped checking his phone screen, stopped digging through the past for red flags, stopped feeling the need to say more than my heart could carry. The day I received the invitation to speak at the Women in Tech Summit as a senior strategy lead, I froze in front of my screen. Zachary came up behind me, placed his hand on my shoulder, didn't say anything, just gave a soft squeeze, as if confirming, "You're back." Not to someone, to yourself. Life in Chicago never promised anything, but it gave me enough quiet to heal at my own pace. In the chaos of downtown streets, I found balance again. No fireworks. Just one person who listens when I say I was broken and doesn't try to fix me. Just says, "It's okay. I'm still here." That late summer Michigan trip started like a simple weekend getaway. Zachary suggested we leave the city for a few days. No emails, no Zoom chimes. We booked a small wooden cabin near Lake Glen, where afternoons were still like air held back by old pine trees, and nights echoed with cicadas and the clink of wine glasses under candlelight. On Sunday morning, while I was standing by the grill flipping a half-cooked crepe, Zachary walked in from the back porch, his hair wet from the lake, holding a small velvet box. He didn't say anything at first, just came closer, rested his hand on my waist, and looked at me with an expression that felt like a familiar melody. "Stella," he said, not bothering to lower his voice. No one was nearby to hear. "Time flies when I'm with you, yet slow enough that I've learned every little thing that makes you smile or go quiet. I can't promise there won't be pain, but I promise I'll never be the one who makes you doubt the love you deserve." Before I could react, he opened the ring box. Not the blinding kind, a slender platinum ring with a teardrop-shaped emerald, flanked by two small diamonds, arranged as simply as the first three notes of a lullaby. I didn't need time to think. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing needed fixing. Only presence, understanding, and a trust that didn't demand vows. We held our wedding at a small chapel in Hyde Park with just 30 guests. My mother cried as she walked me to the doorway, and my father, usually reserved, held my hand a bit longer than usual and whispered, "You picked the right one." Zachary read his vows in that steady, low voice. He didn't look at any notes. Each line felt like it had been sitting in his heart, waiting for this exact moment. "You learn to stand after being broken. Today, I won't promise to shield you from every storm, but I will be the one holding the umbrella if it rains." After the wedding, we bought a 3-story brick home in Old Town, large windows, a small garden where I planted lavender in mid-April. The kitchen became my space for drafting strategy plans, while Zachary prepared breakfast with one hand and balanced his laptop with the other. Everything felt peaceful. Until one evening at a tech investment networking event hosted by the city council. We were there to meet potential partners. While Zachary spoke with a group about AI and logistics, a woman approached me. Sleek, black silk dress, Jimmy Choo heels, and a surprised smile that barely concealed her awkwardness. "Stella?" I turned. "Kendall." She stood there, her sweet, sharp perfume as jarring as an unwrapped memory. Right behind her was Ethan, still polished, slicked back hair, the same half smile. "It's been a while," he said quietly. I nodded. "Yeah." Kendall glanced at my hand. The emerald ring caught the light under the chandelier. Before she could say more, Zachary stepped in, placing a hand on my back. He extended his hand toward Ethan without changing expression. "Buster," Ethan choked out. "Blake," Zachary replied, polite but cool. "I heard your company's seeking Series C funding." Ethan swallowed. Kendall stepped back slightly. "Stella's mentioned you both," Zachary said evenly. "Hope Chicago brings you better luck than Denver." Ethan forced a smile. Kendall looked away. I said nothing else. The party continued, but among hundreds of conversations swirling around, the silence between the four of us spoke louder than all of them. That night, back home, Zachary didn't ask how I felt. We made 2 cups of peppermint tea, played soft jazz, and finished reviewing a few pending pitch decks. When the lights were off, I turned to him, my voice barely above a breath. "Did you know, Ethan? We once co-invested in augmented reality. I exited in time. He didn't. Did you know about me and him?" Zachary nodded. "Before I met you. But I don't let the past color how I see you now." I didn't need anything more. No explanations, no judgment. Just 2 people sharing a bed, trusting each other more than the pain ever took from them. 3 months later, I received an email from Startup Women magazine saying I'd been selected as one of the top 25 women under 40 transforming tech media in America. At the bottom was an invitation to speak at their national summit in December. I forwarded the email to Zachary with a single line. "Looks like we didn't take the wrong path." He replied with a flame emoji and a blue heart. Success didn't arrive with fireworks. It glowed quietly, like the way I relearned how to love, how to stand tall when facing those who once tore down everything I built. I no longer felt the need for revenge. I had moved on, and behind me wasn't ashes, just fresh soil where I'd planted everything with my own hands. The morning my mother passed away, the Colorado sky was a dull gray, like a sheet laid over the entire town. Wind rustled the maple trees out front, ripping a mourning ribbon someone had tied hastily to the wooden fence. I sat in my childhood room, fingers brushing over a newly pressed black dress, unable to feel any warmth in my chest. Zachary stood behind me, watching through the mirror. "I'll drive," he said softly. "You just ride with me." The funeral home was on a quiet street at the edge of town. The early arrivals were old neighbors, her book club friends from church, and a few former students she'd once taught French. Every hug, every condolence felt like stones dropped on frozen water, sounding and vanishing in silence. My father sat in the front row, his dark suit hanging loose on a body worn down by months at her bedside. When I approached, he held my hand longer than usual. "She kept mentioning you," he said, eyes fixed on her photo. "Told me not to carry unforgiven things too far." I squeezed his hand, trying not to lose my balance. The sharp click of heels at the door made me turn. Kendall entered with Ethan. Charcoal dress, hair in a tight bun, muted red lipstick, chin lifted like she was walking into a boardroom. Ethan followed closely, nodding politely at a few familiar faces. She stepped forward, placed a hand on my father's shoulder, then turned to me with a half smile. "You look better than I expected." "Thank you," she replied, her eyes fixed on the green stone ring on Kendall's left hand, gleaming like a piece of hard candy. "Didn't expect to see you this soon either." Kendall glanced toward Zachary, who was speaking with the funeral director. "Is that really Zachary Foster?" She nodded. "My husband." Kendall took 2 seconds to mask her discomfort. Ethan stood rigid as a statue, eyes locked on Zachary. "Is he still investing in AI startups?" he muttered, not directing the question at anyone. Zachary returned just then, shook Ethan's hand with a firm grip, then turned to her and gently placed his hand on her back. "Shall we head inside? The service is about to start." Kendall remained in place, still clutching her purse like letting go might cause everything to unravel. "We should talk. Later," she said quietly, a command disguised as polite suggestion. She didn't reply, just turned away. The funeral unfolded in stillness, accompanied by the soft strains of Claire de Lune, the piece her mother used to play every Sunday evening during dinner. She spoke after the pastor. Every word rose from her chest like a warm current long held back. No one sobbed, but everyone's eyes glistened. Her mother was the kind of person who left behind a gentle but persistent absence, like the scent of lavender on a handkerchief, like the chicken soup she used to make when she caught a cold. After the ceremony, mourners slowly departed. She, her father, and Zachary returned to the old house. It was filled with sympathy bouquets, casseroles, and handwritten cards. Her father slumped onto the couch, worn out, while she headed to her mother's room, intending to retrieve a few old photographs to keep. In the third drawer, where her mother used to keep journals, she found a light brown leather notebook. On the first page was a line in a familiar, slanted script. "Things left unsaid to Stella and Kendall." She sat on the bed and opened it. The pages were filled with neat, careful handwriting. Her mother wrote about their childhood, when she hid a bad test under her pillow, and Kendall threw tantrums because she couldn't wear a princess dress to school. One entry recalled the night she left for college, how her mother had sat by the window until nearly morning. Another admitted that she had never truly known how to handle the jealousy between her daughters, and how much that had haunted her. The final page, written in pale blue ink and a shaky hand, read, "If I'm no longer here, I hope you two won't let past mistakes keep you from loving one another in the future, not for me, but for yourselves." She closed the notebook, heart tightening like a fist that had just been unclenched. That afternoon, while Zachary helped her father tend the backyard garden her mother once loved, Kendall knocked on the bedroom door. No lipstick, no designer dress, just Kendall. With loosely tousled hair and eyes that no longer held defiance. "Dad said you were up here. Can I talk to you for a bit?" She nodded, gesturing to the chair by the window. Kendall didn't sit. She stood, her hands slightly trembling as she reached into her purse. It was an old photo, of the two of them hugging in the kitchen, their eyes squeezed shut in laughter while their mother had just pulled a fresh apple pie from the oven. "Mom kept this in her wallet. I found it this morning." Kendall said softly, "I've lost so much trying to claim what was never mine. I think it's time I learned how to apologize properly." She didn't answer, but she didn't send her away either. Kendall placed the photo on the desk and turned to leave. Just before crossing the threshold, she paused. "If you ever find it in you to forgive me, I'm not asking to be welcomed back right away. Just know I'm trying to be someone worthy of that. The door clicked shut. The scent of roses from the front porch drifted in with the breeze. She looked again at the photo, then tucked it between the pages of her mother's journal. Not hidden away, not yet forgotten. Her heart wasn't healed, but it was no longer splintered. Her mother had left with her secrets, but within those pages she had left behind a whisper. Love doesn't always need a perfect ending. Sometimes it just needs a beginning, where listening can grow. She was drying the ceramic vase her mother had left behind when the doorbell rang. Sunset poured through the living room windows, turning the figure outside into a blurry silhouette. She glanced at the clock. 6:30. Not a neighbor, not a delivery. Opening the door, she found Kendall standing there, no makeup, in a simple gray sweater, eyes sunken like sleep hadn't visited her in days. In her hand was a paper bag from the local bakery, the kind her mother used to bring home every Friday evening. "May I come in?" she asked. Her voice wasn't shaky, but light enough that a single no might send her walking away forever. She nodded, stepping aside. They sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon from an unfinished apple tart Zachary had left in the oven. Kendall was silent for a while, eyes fixed on the balcony where yellow leaves were falling one by one onto the tiled floor. "Nathan hasn't come home for 3 nights, she said. He says he's at shareholder meetings, but even that lie feels half-hearted now. No response, just a soft nudge of the teacup toward her. His company's basically collapsed. 3 recent investments tanked. The house is being refinanced again, but he still hires a stylist weekly and buys wristwatches. Like, reputation is the only thing he can't afford to lose." She let out a laugh that held no joy. "And me? I play the perfect wife, smiling at parties, posting brunch pictures every Sunday, convincing myself it'll all be okay if I just try a little harder. But it's not. It's not okay." I poured more tea and sat in silence. Kendall looked me in the eye for the first time since she arrived. He controls every expense. I'm not allowed to use a credit card without telling him first. If I come home 10 minutes late, he interrogated me over small things. One time, I smiled at a male waiter, and he was so furious he didn't speak to me for 3 days. She pulled an envelope from her purse. "A draft divorce petition. I've hired my own attorney. It's not easy. The prenup is airtight. If I walk away, I walk away with almost nothing." "Why come to me?" I asked. She leaned back in the chair, as if a weight had finally dropped from her shoulders. "Because you're the only person I ever took everything from, and never gave anything back." The air grew thick. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said slowly. "I just want to say, I regret it. Not because of the consequences, but because I betrayed someone who was once the first example I had of strength. I watched you back then, resolute, independent, loving someone with your whole heart. And I wanted that. I didn't know how to earn it, so I stole it." I tightened my grip around the cup. The heat spread to my fingertips, but my heart stayed as cold as the wooden bench on the porch that no one had sat on all season. I thought I won by getting him. But really, I trapped myself in a version of love that never let me breathe. I stayed silent, my eyes still fixed on her. Kendall lowered her head. "Mama always knew. I read her journal. I hated myself every time she wrote, 'I hope Kendall learns to love without destroying.'" I stood up and went into the bedroom. When I returned, I handed her the family photo album Mom used to keep separate, the one no one was allowed to touch. The first page held a picture of Kendall and me as children, hugging in a bathtub filled with soap bubbles, our mother behind us, laughing brightly. "I won't forget what you did," I said, "but I don't want to carry that anger into old age." Kendall took the album, her hands trembling slightly. "I won't ask for anything more. I just want you to know I'm trying to live differently now." She left the apartment like someone who had finally set down a suitcase made of stone. A week later, I came home from the hospital, holding the test results, standing on the balcony in the rain. Zachary wrapped his arms around me from behind and whispered, "Is everything okay?" I turned around and handed him the paper. 2 bold lines. He was silent for a few seconds, then hugged me tightly. The scent of his damp shirt filled my nose, and tears spilled without any reason other than pure relief. I didn't text Kendall, but I sent her an old photo of Mom hugging both of us, with a note underneath: "Some things are lost, but still have room to grow again." Stella's story proves that betrayal may shatter parts of the soul, but it can't stop a strong woman from rebuilding herself. From a broken engagement and a sister's ultimate betrayal, she created a new life, found real love, succeeded in her career, and began the journey into motherhood. Stella doesn't forget the past, but she refuses to let it imprison her future. In pain, she found power. In forgiveness, she found herself. And in love, she found peace. What do you think about Stella's choices and her journey of forgiveness after betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel to hear more heartfelt, powerful stories about life and family.